All right, fellas, what's going on? Sunday afternoon, we are going to be tackling a Dynasty not Superflex. Sorry, I almost said Superflex. Dynasty one quarterback startup mock draft. A lot of you guys have been clamoring for, some no nonsense scoring settings in the comment section. No, 7-point tight end premium and, half point when the sun's up and a full moon. So we're going to do a bog standard startup mock draft. PPR Dynasty, no tight end premium, no super flex for those of you guys that love vanilla ice cream. So yeah, we are going to be doing that today. Danny, what's up? How you doing?
Not too bad, not too bad. Not all of us can raw dog it or do a single condom. There'll be a couple of double condomers out there, so I do respect it.
Yeah, for sure. So I put the link to join the draft in the YouTube chat. I will throw it into the Discord as well for those of you guys that are in there, and then we'll get this going as soon as it fills up. So in the meantime, if you have any questions, feel free to fire them away. Feel free to ask us anything. Could be Dynasty related, could be redraft related. Me and Danny are both deep into the best ball streets since he was in Buffalo this weekend, so we got a bunch of our drafts going fast and furious. I'm getting real excited, to be honest, for the season to get underway because I mean, we're only in July. I feel like every year I get more and more antsy for the season earlier. Like usually I'm antsy for the season by like the end of August. Then last year I felt like it was like the beginning of August. And this year I feel like because I watched tape on 2024 players also, it made me more antsy for football to come back.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. No, I'm even just getting some exposures out there, like getting some drafts in. I just can't wait for the season to start. I'm just like picturing these players like accumulating points and potentially, winning the millions of dollars by the end of the year in terms of the underdog drafts that we were able to do the other day. So
yeah, for sure. Okay, why did it share that way? I don't know why it's showing my whole thing.
Share. You got to do by tab.
Yeah, I don't know why it did that way. Okay, there we go. This should be good. So we are. You guys can see the scoring settings there at the top. There, it's 12-team Dynasty PPR single quarterback, no tight end premium. So nobody pick a quarterback super high, or I'm going to be annoyed. We also have some questions here in the chat here. Smooth Criminal, first one in here. What's up? What's going on?
What's up?
Cats took over. I'm in the 12th round of a Superflex startup right now. I have Josh Allen, Amon-Ra, Mark Andrews, Diggs, Najee, Goff, Dameon Pierce, King Henry, Howell. Okay, so very clearly like a win now type of build. Does have an extra first for some buying power and 2 extra seconds. What trade should I look to make? I mean, your roster looks pretty strong for the time being. I mean, you're a little weak at QB2/QB3 with Goff and Howell as your guys there, but you have the liquidity and the assets to be able to maybe make a move if you need to.
Yeah, no, I'd agree with you there. Just wait until the season.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're strong enough at wide receiver and running back to the point that I wouldn't probably force any kind of trades here, which he has Andrews too at tight end. So, I mean, he's fine at that position as well. Just need a couple more people into this draft, then we can get it kicked off. Offered a mid to late 2024 first for Rachaad White and Sean Tucker. What on earth, dude? That is an easy first round pick. Taking that.
Yeah.
Byronic, Amari, I'm assuming that's Jameson Williams, Gibson for Diggs, Carter, and Elijah Moore. I have Brees trying to win now without sacrificing too much. Thoughts? Okay.
Yeah, that's fine to me. Elijah and Carter, I would prefer JMO and Gibson, but the difference.
It's probably about fair, give or take.
I mean, if you need some difference-making production, I think there's a fair price to pay upgrading Amari to Diggs.
Yeah. I think I would prefer like a better piece than Carter. Like if you could get like a 2 or like maybe a different competitive. Like I know you have Brees and you're like, oh, I need my hand.
James Conner.
But I would prefer to just take a shot on a different backfield. Like if you throw AJ Dillon into this deal instead of Michael Carter, I think it's just a much better situation. So 2 more and then we can get this thing going. So if you guys have just joined in, we are doing a 12-team PPR Dynasty draft, non-superflex. It will be a 1 quarterback draft. And we need 2 more of you. The link is in the chat on YouTube. And if you are in our Discord, you can find it there as well. Khalil Herbert. Yeah, I mean, I'd prefer Khalil Herbert to Michael Carter. That makes the deal a little bit better.
Actually, you know what? I think Khalil Herbert's probably like the perfect valuation there.
Yeah, because I mean the difference between Diggs and Amari is what, like a first second swap?
Yeah, probably.
Yeah, and then Carter versus, or like Khalil Herbert, sorry, versus Gibson is probably slightly lean Herbert, I would imagine. And then Jameson Williams versus Elijah, you probably slightly lean Jameson Williams.
I would take who's the second running back? I would take Gibson over Herbert personally.
Yeah, I think that's a conversation though. It's like a pretty even trade.
Same tier.
Give or take.
Hey, looky.
Fantasy Condo. Just need one more, and we get this thing going. 10-team Superflex, half PPR, start 12. He's probably got a question on the way. He's going to give me a mid-second upgrade to Khalil.
Join the draft.
Wait. What's going on here?
I'm telling them to join the draft. Sorry.
Oh, wait. Byronic, are you giving away Khalil Herbert instead of Gibson, and he's going to give you a mid-second if you give him Khalil instead of Gibson? I would just take the mid-second then.
No. He said if I take Khalil off of him, he's gonna want.
Oh, he's gonna make me. I'm actually stupid as hell. Yeah. No, I definitely wouldn't do that. Okay, so we are good to go. We have the draft full. I'm gonna randomize the draft order here.
Marco got in.
He did. Okay,
let's go.
For the last time, this is a one quarterback draft. Do not draft the super flex players very, very highly. We want to give our one quarterback brethren some love here.
One quarterback, Marco.
Yep.
All right. Good morning, boys. What's going on, Leonardo?
Morning.
Half PPR, super flex, tight end premium. I've got the 104, 105 in the rookie draft. Quarterbacks are Tua, Daniel Jones, and Russell Wilson. Strong at wide receiver, weak at running back. Do I pass on Stroud for JSN and Gibbs? I mean, so me and Danny were talking right before we went live. We're gonna probably do an upgraded 2023 or an updated 2023 rookie rankings, and one of the updates from our previous one will be that I have Gibbs over Stroud now.
Yeah, no, he's going to be over Stroud for me too, probably.
Yeah, because I mean, when you look at startup value, would you rather have a top 4 running back in Dynasty or the 13th to 15th best quarterback in Dynasty who could still face his share of volatility as far as, the market is concerned if he has like a Tua Tagovailoa like career arc? There was points and times where Tua was like kind of fluctuating over the first course of his couple of years there. So I am on the clock here. I'm definitely probably not going to go with a running back. Pitts would be in conversation at tight end. This is non-tight end premium. I think my highest rated wide receiver, I believe, is
Amon or Waddle.
Yeah, so I'm going to go with St. Brown there. Where I would start, so the one thing we should probably talk about is the dynamic of a single quarterback draft here is for you. Where does the first quarterback in your rankings, just out of curiosity?
Well, let me check them right now. The first quarterback in my rankings, I believe, is in the mid-second round, but I could take a look at that.
See, I actually have my first quarterback at 11. I have Mahomes at 11.
Let me see. Overall. Yeah, second round, 15th.
Yeah, I think the interesting thing is obviously it's a one quarterback league, so you don't need as many quarterbacks, but the value of still having Mahomes to anchor your team for the long term still kind of holds true. Because I mean, we always talk about rebuilding strategy in relation to Superflex and locking down, stable quarterbacks long term, but it does still apply in one quarterback formats. And ideally, you don't have to spend your first round pick on a quarterback. Maybe you can, if you're picking 111, 112 area, you can take a Jalen Waddle or Devontae Smith like Cat Stafford did there, and then come back and get yourself an anchor quarterback. But at the same time, if you're building out a rebuild, it benefits you to have those long-term value insulated positions. And when you're deciding between a back-end wide receiver 1 and the best quarterback in Dynasty, I mean, to me, it makes some sense to actually go with the best quarterback in Dynasty in that situation.
Yeah, I would agree with you there.
112 Pog, hate to see it. 10-team Superflex, half PBR, start 12. Would you trade Anthony Richardson, Mac Jones, and a 2024 first for Justin Herbert? Yes, I would. I would absolutely do that.
Heartbeat.
Yeah, you offload all of that risk of holding Anthony Richardson and, him not, working out from a fantasy perspective, and you get yourself just a proven stud in Justin Herbert. And yeah, is there a world where this time next year Anthony Richardson's more valuable than Justin Herbert? I think it's a very reasonable possibility that if Richardson has a good rookie year, at least from a rushing standpoint, he probably will be more valuable than Herbert. Especially if this is a 6-point per passing touchdown league or a team that you're rebuilding and you want stable assets for, Herbert just makes way too much sense.
Yeah, no, I would agree with you there. Any news on the Detroit running back room? Was there any news to expect?
I saw some people debating like Montgomery and Gibbs on Twitter a couple days ago. I'm not exactly sure if there was any like reports that came out that caused those debates, but I will say I think they're both good values in all formats. Like I like Gibbs
I would agree.
especially in redraft when you can get him in like the 3rd, 4th round, and Montgomery too. Like he's available in like the 8th, 9th round. I think they're gonna pretty much operate a similar offense to what they were operating before. So both of those guys have the possibility to be, very, very usable fantasy assets. Okay, I'm back on the board here. Amon-Ra was my first pick. I miss out on the top tier quarterback, so I'm probably not going to go with a quarterback here. I could go with like a Drake London. I think I'm going to actually go with Pitts.
Damn it.
Even though it is a non-tight end premium, I think he was the best player on the board, and I personally would have taken him over Smith and Higgins.
Yeah, no, I would agree with you there. I believe my next rated player actually is Drake London, so I'll go with the second year wide receiver on my team, Drake London.
Yeah, and for what it's worth, the scoring format, you guys can see it here too. It's just a 2 running back, 2 wide receiver, 3 flex. So I mean, wide receiver, you don't have to start 3 wide receivers, so you could maybe lean more running backs in this setting. We're gonna only go 11 rounds here because I mean, 1 quarterback, 11 round picks. We're gonna be talking like probably some fringe running back 3s or whatever, and I'm not too interested in delving in deep to that position, but yeah, so I mean, looking at the board so far, I mean, it looks relatively standard. I don't know if you guys are in a lot of 1 quarterback drafts. Let us know in the comments what values you kind of like, what values you don't like there. But pretty straightforward. I don't think anything surprised me so far.
Yeah, no, I'd agree with you.
I will say, I mean, Smith going 110 was a little high, but that was pretty much the only one that I noticed. You stack him up with Jalen Hurts. I'm guessing that was your plan the whole time, and that's why you went with him. I probably would have just went with Hurts first if that was your plan, but
yeah, or like London or Hall or someone like that.
Yeah, so pretty fun though that we're into July. I'm very excited that we're into the month of July because about 3 weeks from now, give or take, is when, or not even 3 weeks. I think about 18 days from now is when the rookies will start reporting to training camp, and then about 3 weeks from now, 3.5 weeks from now is when everybody will report to training camp, and then before you know it, we're gonna have the Hall of Fame game, and we're gonna have preseason, and we're gonna have legitimate stuff to talk about, trends to talk about, and that'll be super super fun to go over. So. We're seeing Burrow goes off the board there as well. Tyreek Hill and Kupp are off the board, so we still have some win now receivers left. I think, has Diggs gone? No, I don't think he has. I go Saquon. Hot take: Devontae Smith is wide receiver 1 in Philly next year. Jeez, that is a spicy one.
I can't get there because of how talented AJ Brown is, but I mean, Devontae Smith's a very good wide receiver, so.
Yeah, I mean, so from a fantasy perspective, is it possible that he outproduces them, even though that AJ Brown is the known wide receiver 1? Maybe because AJ Brown is going to command number 1 corners and the coverage of defenses and that kind of thing. It wouldn't shock me if we had like a AB Juju situation from a couple of years ago where they were both like very, very productive receivers. And sense. I think both of them finished as like top 6 guys that year in 2018. So that wouldn't shock me. I personally do think I love Devontae Smith. Don't get me wrong. But AJ Brown to me is the better receiver and the more valuable fantasy receiver because he's bigger in the red zone and he scores touchdowns more frequently. And also he's more of like a yards after the catch guy than Devontae Smith. So he's able to create a little bit more on his own as well. But they're both outstanding receivers. They're probably both top 20 receivers in the NFL, with AJ probably being a top 8 receiver in the NFL.
Yep.
Christian Watson or Quentin Johnston in Dynasty. I personally lean with the devil in Christian Watson. We've already seen him produce at the NFL level to a certain degree. You lean the situation with Quentin Johnston for sure. You would much rather be tethered to Justin Herbert than you would be to Jordan Love. But at the same time, the rookie production is more predictive than any prospect profile that we could possibly conjure up. So I lean Christian Watson. I think I have Christian Watson as like my wide receiver 21 or something in Dynasty. And then I think Quentin Johnston's like wide receiver 25, 26 for me.
I actually have Watson at 20, Johnston at 21. So,
so
I have Watson
right back to back, eh?
Yeah. Yep. I'm a little bit left for a loop here because Mark Andrews is my highest rated player, but I think given the construct of my team, getting an old tight end isn't kind of what I want to build. I think my next rated player would actually be Trevor Lawrence, so I think I'm gonna go with T-Law.
I'm so glad you didn't take Jordan Addison there. I wanted him so bad. Yeah, I
Over
got a
Fields?
young team going as well. I'm gonna build out my kind of foundation here. The running back position, I think in single quarterback, even more so than superflex. I guess in superflex, it actually makes more sense to go zero RB because you anchor with two quarterbacks.
Yeah.
But I find the value of running backs is pushed up a lot higher in one quarterback leagues of running backs. And even though, I mean, this is like not a high valued running back room, given that you guys are all listening to us and you don't take running backs highly, I just generally am not okay with any of the selections of running backs most of the time. Like Jonathan Taylor and Gibbs going ahead of, actually, I don't, those ones weren't bad, I would say, but like Najee Harris going ahead of Addison to me is just like absolutely
Yeah, I agree.
outrageous. And then same goes for even Saquon going over Diggs. Like I would have probably just stacked up Jefferson, Kupp, and Diggs and just had the most lethal 3-stack of receivers ever.
I am curious, by the way. So I thought for sure you would take Justin Fields. Where do you have Fields ranked?
It's not that I don't want Justin Fields, is that I viewed a tier break with Addison at the wide receiver position for my build versus Fields, Richardson, Watson, and Bryce Young and Kyler are also on the board at quarterback. So I don't feel the need to really take a quarterback at this point in time. Plus, most of the room has a quarterback already as well. And I'm more fine like punting to the back end QB1s in a one quarterback's format versus, in Superflex. I'm obviously looking to try and get an advantage if I can.
Makes sense.
Yeah. So still got some win now, guys. Devontae Adams and such on the board here. Miguel also says, I miss the NFL so much. I feel like there's nothing going on. Have you heard any camp rumors of an underrated player you like? I mean, so I broke down all of the mini camp and OTAs rumors and leaks and stuff a couple weeks ago or a week ago. If you want to check that video out. This year, if you guys were following our TikTok last year, I did fantasy football news of the day over there. And I was like, talking about, camp reports and hype and all that kind of stuff. For some reason, don't ask me why, my dumbass didn't also post them as YouTube shorts last year. And I absolutely will be doing that. So if you don't have TikTok, you don't use TikTok, I will post those as shorts this year. And it'll be just like a 60-second fantasy news of the day segment, probably every day from like the end of July when training camp opens into like early in the season, because, we get nuggets constantly. They're flying fast and furious once training camp opens of who's impressing, who's not impressing, who's running with the ones, who's injured, whatever. And then also who's holding out and all that kind of stuff. And then once we get into preseason games, obviously we get more information because then we see, usage and things like that. So I'm really mad at myself, to be honest, for not also posting those as YouTube shorts last year. But they did really well on TikTok and they help us grow the TikTok platform. So hopefully those will help you guys out a ton when it comes to, being up to date with what players are impressing, what players aren't impressing, what players are working into sizable roles and that kind of thing.
Yep.
Okay.
Damn it. I was hoping DK would fall. You were going to take him though.
I was going to take Metcalf if he was there, but I am also interested. Like I wanted Fields to fall. He didn't end up coming back to me. So I actually think I'm going to punt QB again. I think I should be able to get one of Richardson, Bryce Young, Kyler Murray, or Deshaun Watson on the way back, just given that everybody has QBs for the most part, except for Cam and Byronic and Sama Rolf. But if they all took a quarterback, then I would still have one of those guys. So I think I'm probably going to fade QB yet again. I already have a tight end. Wide receiver, again, I went for more of a young style build here. I don't love the youth wide receivers on the board, so I might just go with a value accumulation piece at this spot, which I'd be caught between two guys, and they both play for Jacksonville. I'm gonna go with ETN, given that I think he was more of a tier break at running back than everybody else there at wide receiver. So you get Calvin Ridley to stack up with Lawrence if you want to do it.
Yeah, I really wanted ETN though. I'm not gonna lie. Go Ridley.
Yeah, I think I could build out a nice little 1-year punt with this team, just given the framework that I have so far. I mean, Pitts and Addison and ETN could be good this year, right? We have, faith that I've drafted a ton of Addison on Underdog, and Pitts as well, I think is a good value over there. But I think their value does come more in the long term because they're young players. So I like the build that I have so far. Hopefully I can secure a QB on the way back. And I mean, somebody like Richardson or Bryce Young would fit my team quite well. Same with Kyler Murray.
Yep.
All right, so the running back position starting to thin out a little bit. Kenneth Walker, Nick Chubb, those guys are probably tier breaks. Ramondre and Pollard at the end of that tier as well. And then the running back position is probably going to die off a little bit. Still tons of like your prototype wide receiver 2-3 types left with, you know, Debo, McLaurin, you know, DJ Moore, Chris Godwin and company there. Looking at some of these team constructions, I'm just like trying to figure out, like, this is obviously a competitive team. This looks like a competitive team. Marco looks like he's going for a competitive team as well. This kind of looks not competitive, but you took Najee, so I'm not really a fan of that build. Obviously, this is a competitive team that you take Travis Kelce, that automatically makes you competitive. More of a rebuild. So I would say this room, generally speaking, is kind of going more competitive, give or take.
Which makes sense, yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, it looks like we got like, it looks like Cam is going with like a true rebuild here. It looks like you're going more rebuild than not. I'm going more rebuild than not. And then that looks to be kind of like the extent of, nobody's like really tearing it down. Obviously, if this was a real draft, we'd be trading
First round
down.
picks would be flying. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it'd be a completely different dynamic for sure. Also, that has way too much glare.
Yeah, oh yeah. Where do you guys have Kincaid ranked for Dynasty tight ends overall? So I have Dalton Kincaid ranked as my Dynasty tight end 7, behind Kyle Pitts, Mark Andrews, George Kittle, Travis Kelce, TJ Hawkinson, Dallas Goedert, and Dalton Kincaid is at 7.
I got it. Pitts. I was just going to compare. I got Pitts, Andrews, Kelce, Kittle, Goddard, Hawkinson, Freiermuth, and Njoku as my 1 to 8. Kincaid's 9, Mater's 10, Dulcich at 11.
That's interesting that you have Njoku and, what did you say, Freiermuth also over Kincaid?
Yeah.
So I understand that, and I would say at like face value, that's probably like the process play, because we've seen Njoku and Freiermuth, especially Freiermuth because he's so young, post like some pretty good starts to their career. But at the same time, I think Kincaid's value accumulation is much higher than both of those guys. Like if we get a tight end 6 season out of Dalton Kincaid, he might legitimately be the Dynasty tight end 1 at the end of the year, depending on what happens with Pitts.
For sure. And I understand it. If you're getting him at a value because his accumulation process, like you said, should be pretty clear. If he has a decent year, he will go up in value. I just know right now, Freiermuth is going to be a really good tight end. He's going to be at worst a mid tight end 1 type. And I'd venture to say that it's more likely than not he has a this year Hawkinson style season within the next 2.
Yeah, no, he with the tight end position, generally speaking, I would say you're better off just betting on proven commodities, because we miss on breakout candidates like left, right, and center on tight ends. Like I feel like there's 5 or 6 good, decent bets for breakout candidates, good athletes, decent draft capital, all that kind of stuff. And they just miss because tight ends simply are not that involved in their NFL offenses most of the time. But to me, there's no bigger value accumulation bet if you're a rebuilding team than taking Dalton Kincaid in like the 8th, 9th round, because he could legitimately be a 3rd round startup pick this time next year in tight end premium.
Yep, I would agree with you there. Just going to be on the clock right now. A couple guys pretty flat here right now. I would say my main considerations would be Burks and Dotson. I don't think either of them are going to make it back to me if I pass on one for the other. I know who you'd prefer, so I'll wrap you a nice little gift there.
Yeah, and again, I'm not taking a quarterback yet because
taking Dotson.
Yeah, because these guys all behind me have QBs already. So and Bryce Young, Kyler Murray, and Deshaun Watson are all on the board. So I'm very content waiting again at quarterback, and I might honestly wait until my 7th round pick because only Byronic and Sammer don't have quarterbacks. So I might just completely punt that position. It's weird taking this approach in a startup because we're just so obsessed with quarterbacks and Superflex. But I mean, it kind of does work out in your favor if you want to back end QB1, because I think Kyler Murray and Deshaun Watson and those guys have just as much potential to finish as top 5 options as, you know, Trevor Lawrence and Justin Fields do, who went like 2-3 rounds earlier. So I am on
Yep.
the board, like you said. You knew exactly where I was going. I'm going to take Jahan Dotson. He's my highest rated receiver currently available. Would be relatively close, I suppose, with his teammates Terry McLaurin and Michael Pittman, and Marquise Brown is relatively in that range as well. But Dotson, from a youth perspective, fits my build, and also I think he has a lot of potential to climb in value. So at this point in time, I'm kind of trying to build out like a 1-year punt because I have ETN. I think I could sell him mid-season if this were a real team, or I could just. He's still young enough that if I built out a 1-year punt, had a mid first rounder next year, add a running back to this team or whatever, then I could compete in 2024 with my primes kind of aligning. And that leans me towards Kyler Murray as the quarterback that I probably want to add to this team because he obviously would help tank my pick a little bit and also be very good going forward.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, your team is strong from a foundational standpoint. And like you kind of said, because you're built more around youth, they're probably going to be peaking from a production standpoint next year rather than this year. So getting Kyler Murray whenever you decide to choose him, like it's going to help you out. You might have to take him here, though, because I will say Samarol might still needs a quarterback, and he looks like a competitor. Oh, Kyler Murray, right. So he probably won't take him.
Well, yeah, Byronic has like a more of a youngish build. I don't know, man. I don't really have a huge qualm with just wait because Watson and Bryce are still on the board too.
Yeah, and Dak, you got options.
Well, I mean, Dak doesn't really fit my team, but Watson, Bryce, and Kyler are the three that I would probably prefer, and I think I'm gonna roll the dice at the 7-8 to see if one of those guys fall back to me. Maybe
Makes
I mean
sense.
You guys are probably all listening to us talk about this, so you might be nice and just let me have them. But in a real draft, I still think that's a decent process play. In a 1-quarterback league, I don't anticipate more than 2 quarterbacks going off the board, but I mean, I could be screwed. You never know. I would like to see what kind of wide receiver talent falls back to me. Even though I'm not the biggest like Jameson Williams fan, for example, I think he's actually. I guess I already have a Monra, and I'm not even high on JMO in the first place, so I might pass on him.
What's up, big dogs? What's up, PICKEMS? Awesome name, by the way.
Yeah, we've talked about it for sure.
Danny taking Ridley. Yeah, I mean, like I'm just gonna keep harping on Ridley all off season. You guys know how high I am on him. Pat Frymuth in the mid first or Kyle Pitts? It's still Kyle Pitts for me. I talked how much I like Pat Frymuth, but with that being said, it's still Kyle Pitts for me.
I wouldn't say it's a pit side easy because he literally says pit side easy question mark, but I definitely would. I would also take Kyle Pitts. So the wide receiver position is kind of gross. I'm not going to lie. I don't love the board at wide receiver. I think my highest rated wide receiver, no cap, is Deontay Johnson or Elijah Moore. I actually, because I'm building out a punt here, you know what? I'm just going to take Kyler. I need him for the punt. I was going to maybe take Javonte with that pick just because he kind of fit my build as well, but I would prefer to get him next round if he's somehow still there. I think Kyler was more of a tier break.
By the way, you guys can see, true to my word, whether it's a super flex, whether it's a 1-quarterback, and he's just gonna rip a 0 RB.
Pretty much, yeah. We're just we hate running backs. Like the thing with like it's not even that we like dislike running backs altogether. It's we just hate them in startups because it feels like even if it's not really true, it feels like right after the startup is over, they lost 10% of their value.
Yeah. Well, that's typically how it goes too. And if you look at startup ADP versus actual like market valuations in some of the more competitive leagues we're in, try to sell a running back for any equivalent round wide receiver, and you get laughed at it. Sometimes it feels.
Yeah, well,
like realistically,
go ahead.
Well, I was just gonna say, like realistically, like as much as I like JT, in this room it's more indicative because he fell. But in some startups, like in the Superflex, like he's going early 3rd round over Chris Olave. Then you try to trade Jonathan Taylor for Chris Olave post startup, and the guy wants like a first for second swap on it.
Pretty much, you know what I mean? Like it's pretty crazy to me that that like I can value, especially the high end guys, because I think Bijan, Taylor, Breece Hall, Gibbs, they should be valued as like multiple firsts, but try and get multiple firsts for them, like you said. Like I think Jonathan Taylor should be worth 2 late first-round picks. If you are a contender, I'd be willing to give up my 2024 and my 2025 first. If you were like shoving your chips in the middle, you already had Bijan and one other solid running back. Your wide receivers were loaded. Your quarterbacks were loaded. Your tight end was loaded. And you needed a difference-making running back 2 or running back 1 for your team. I would be willing to give up my projected 109 to 112 2024 first and my projected mid to late 2025 first.
I just can't do it. I've had the
Like,
opportunity to in the league. I just can't do it.
so the attitude that you have is exactly the attitude that most people have, at least in the leagues that we play in. So having that attitude, you know that Jonathan Taylor absolutely should be worth that package. I think he's worth 2 ones, two late ones,
You just don't want to mortgage it for a back.
Right, but you don't want to make that trade if you're the person making it.
Yeah, exactly.
Because Taylor could have another injury-riddled season and be worth a late first at most next year.
Yeah, like it's tough because I mean, like for example, you do the ACL test. JT tears his ACL. He's a round 4 pick at best next year.
Oh, there's no way he's a round 4 pick. I think he'd be around 6 or 7 pick if he blew.
That's why I said at best.
Yeah,
at best. Because I'm thinking, okay, maybe somebody convinces themselves like it's still the Saquon type of thing. Saquon's going in the mid-4th, and he's about a year older than JT, so that's kind of how I equated it. With that being said, though, Saquon is coming off a big bounce back year, so if JT's coming off a down season, they probably, there's some bias in there inherently. But yeah, no, you apply the test on a running back versus you apply the test on Jackson Smith and Jigba. He tears his ACL. He is going in the exact same spot that he is right now.
Yeah, I mean, maybe instead of the 2, I guess this is a 1 quarterback, but just from frame of reference, Superflex, he's like a late 3rd round or a mid 3rd round pick. He'd probably be like a mid 4th or like an early 4th, but he loses like less than a round of ADP max. Yeah. Like he's not going down max. 3 rounds or whatever.
Well, not to mention the rookie class next year, as strong as it can be. Like, outside of Marvin Harrison, maybe if Ibuka has a crazy season, he would be valued up there with JSN. But unless that happens, I think you're taking JSN over any other non-Marvin Harrison Jr. receiver, right?
So it's interesting that you bring up Ibuka, because in the thing that I did on our site, which of course you guys can check out if you're members of flockfantasy.com, use promo code FSC for a 2-day free trial. If you want to just go check out the video that I'm talking about, I broke down the top 10 receivers in 2024 and I ranked them, and I did a film breakdown on the top 5. And when I got to Ibuka, what I was watching was essentially just JSN all over again, except a better athlete. So it wouldn't shock me if Ibuka is a better prospect than JSN when all is said and done.
Yeah, no, that is fair. I'm on the clock here though, and I actually don't know who I have ranked next. Let me take a look. I'm on my wide receiver rankings. How much time do I have on the clock? Like 30 seconds?
30 seconds.
Okay, I think it would be Javonte. As much as I don't like Javonte, I think that would probably be my pick.
You slut. So, yeah. You knew I wanted him.
Well, I just looked at the running backs. I'm like, yeah, he's probably like a clear tier break, right? Like,
yeah, probably. So I'm back on the clock here. I would say, I mean, Elijah Moore probably would have been my highest rated receiver, but he just went off a couple picks ago. Could go with like a Rashad Bateman type, would probably be my next rated receiver. I kind of like the running backs a little bit more at this point in the draft. I'm not a big Swift guy, so I'm probably not going to. Oh, this is close, man.
A little bit of Sharbs.
So one guy that I actually kind of like from a redraft perspective that I think carries a ton of liquidity given the team that he plays for is actually Isaiah Pacheco. I think when it probably would have been between Cam Akers, Zach Charbonnet, and Isaiah Pacheco for me there. But I think Pacheco has a ton of upside from like a liquidity standpoint, because if he does hold the early down workload for the Kansas City Chiefs, let's say, because going into last year, would we have said that like Ramondre Stevenson was a long-term play? No, right? Like we would have been like, oh, he might have a role this year, but then they're probably going to draft somebody or whatever. If Isaiah Pacheco is a good enough running back that he's carrying the load 200, 250 carries for the Chiefs this year, they're probably not going to address the running back position, at least right away, because we've seen that NFL teams have kind of wised up to like, unless you're the Seahawks, to like just using these guys on their rookie contracts and then kind of expelling them into free agency or whatever. So I think Pacheco actually would be a decent candidate, especially if, mid-season I get to the point where he's the RB11 in fantasy because he scored 6 touchdowns in the first 8 games of the season or whatever.
Yeah, no, I would agree there. I mean, like just the situation, obviously last year he has qualms in terms of his receiving profile, but realistically, because of how efficient he is as a rusher, he's probably going to be given a leash by Andy Reid. And if he's given a leash and he could potentially chip in on the goal line that we could potentially see, because realistically, people keep pointing to the fact that the Chiefs don't run the ball on the goal line. Well, I think it's kind of a yin and yang thing where, yeah, they don't run the ball on the goal line, but at the same time, they haven't had a pure runner that can really handle that load on the goal line. Clyde Edwards-Helaire was one of the most inefficient goal line running backs when they drafted him. So I do think if Pacheco can prove himself from an efficiency standpoint, he could potentially get that role.
Yeah, and we saw Kareem Hunt was able to carve out a goal line role no problem when he was in Kansas City.
Yep.
And I mean, some of that was with Alex Smith, but even still, they used him quite a bit once Mahomes took over the starting role there. So again, I'm not loving the board at the moment. It looks kind of gross at like almost every position. I think Josh Downs is my highest rated receiver, if I'm not mistaken. I already have Pitts, so I'm probably not looking at the tight end position. Running backs, like honestly, I don't like the board, so I'm just going to take a player I know is a good guy, a good player, and I'm just going to take Bryce Young. I know I kind of don't really need him, but I don't love the running back positions board, and I don't love the wide receiver positions board, so I'm just going to go with best player available, hoping that Bryce Young can accumulate some value for me, and maybe I have a two-headed monster at quarterback going forward, or maybe I shop one of these guys.
Yeah, no, that's definitely fair. I think my next highest rated player, it's hard to tell at this point in the board because I don't know exactly who's gone off. But if I'm judging mid-8th round, where do I have this guy ranked? Devon Achane I have ranked at 79th overall in one quarterback. So give or take if you're doing that, that's about the 8th round. So I will take Devon Achane here. And yeah, he was my highest rated running back left.
Traded Devontae Smith, Gibbs, Pittman, and Jeff Wilson for CeeDee Lamb, Addison, a 24 first and a 24 third. What's up?
I was just going to say real quick, I'm probably going to have to sign out now. So if you can carry it from here on forward.
Yeah, no problem. Are you going to continue drafting or?
Yeah, I'll be on my phone. I can't stream like right now.
Yeah, no worries.
All right. Sounds good. All right. Appreciate that, brother. And those watching, enjoy the draft.
Yes, sir. All right, so Katz, he talks about a trade that he made here. He traded away Devontae Smith, Jahmyr Gibbs, Michael Pittman Jr., and Jeff Wilson for CeeDee Lamb, Jordan Addison, a 2025 first and a 24 third. So for me, trying to piece this trade together, I think CeeDee Lamb and Addison for Devontae Smith and Gibbs, in my opinion, is about even, give or take. I prefer CeeDee Lamb to Smith by a solid margin. I prefer Gibbs to Addison by a solid margin, but I think those two kind of balance each other out. Worst case scenario, maybe you throw the third side on the CeeDee Lamb and Addison side just to make it even. And then you're talking a 2025 first for Pittman and Jeff Wilson, who's not really worth anything. So honestly, I think the CD side, you get the best asset. And also Addison has a chance to be as valuable or more valuable than Devontae Smith with a solid rookie season. So that definitely has a chance to work out for you well, even though Gibbs has a chance to have a great rookie season also. I mean, the guy's already valued as a top 4 dynasty running back on the market. He's not really going to go up much in value. What you're getting and why you're drafting him that high is because he has a projectable workload for the next 3, 4, 5 years because he was a first round pick and a top 12 pick. So Gibbs he's not really a value accumulation piece, but he definitely has stable insulated value at the running back position. So that's a pretty decent fair trade across the board, but I do slightly like the CD side, especially if you're rebuilding. How many firsts for Bijan? So again, this comes back to what we were just talking about. How many firsts can you get for Bijan? In a super flex format, I want 3 1s for Bijan Robinson. A 1 quarterback format, I want 3 1s plus something. So 3 1s and Rashad Bateman or something, some piece on top of the 3 first rounders. And this is assuming that they're like mid to late or whatever. If you give me like 1 early first and 1 late first or something, that might equal it out. But the difficult thing is, like we kind of just talked about, people don't love paying up for running backs most of the time, unless it's like a casual league. So Bijan's a difficult asset to sell if you were in a position like I was in one of my leagues where I wasn't ready to compete. And I was picking 101 and I tried trading down like hell for the 102, for the 103, try and get myself a quarterback, pick up some draft capital, whatever the case is. And people just didn't want to do it. So I had to stick and pick. I had to take Bijan Robinson, and I want 3 first rounders for him. But the problem is, like, nobody in this league is going to give me 3 first rounders. So the difficult thing for me is I probably have to sell him straight up for a player if I want to. Like if I'm going to use him in a package deal to get a quarterback, or if I'm going to use him and try and sell him for one of the LSU wide receivers or something, like it's just very difficult to sell Bijan Robinson. But at the same time, if you're in a competitive window and you have draft capital to burn, let's say your team is well stocked at every position and you have 2 1s next year and 2 1s in 2025, I'm comfortable giving up my projected late first in 2025, and one of the lower projected first that I'm holding on to for Bijan Robinson, because I don't think you'll regret paying 3 first rounders for him. He's one of the few assets I would do that for at the running back position. Jared said my team is basically the same as everything I usually draft with one less quarterback. Yeah, I mean, you got yourself, he's picking at the 112 here. Patrick Mahomes at the 2-1, pair him up with T. Higgins, Jerry Judy Watson, Zay Flowers, go young at wide receiver there. Dobbins, kind of a similar what I did with ETN. You just went with like a value accumulation piece that you could potentially sell midseason or use in a 1-year punt situation. So pretty decent build. Can't get myself to draft Chiefs running backs in a startup. Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of on the same page. I don't love drafting Isaiah Pacheco, but it's a 7-8 in a 1 quarterback league when I already had like pretty solid positional depth elsewhere. I didn't mind that. I suppose I could have gone with a receiver instead. I could have gone with like Bateman or something. But I mean, this is why we're doing mocks, right? We tinker with the builds, and if I get to my next pick and there's like no receivers left, I probably will regret that decision. But that's why we do mocks. So 10 team, 1 quarterback, start 9. How many first for Bijan? So in a 10 teamer and a 1 quarterback, I want 3 first plus another asset for Bijan Robinson, because he is the 3rd pick in this mock draft that we're doing here. And Marco picked the correct, but like that's who I would have picked as well if I was sitting at 103. So we're talking about like a top 3 startup pick type of value. So you need at least 3 ones to get there. So if Danny's out, I'm out. JK, my dumbass is still watching. Love to see it. Peace out, Dan. Danny doesn't care about us. I mean, I dipped early on one of the streams last week or the other day. So yeah, feel free to fire away with some questions. Now we're starting to see some of these rookie wide receivers come off the board with Josh Downs, Jonathan Mingo, Rashee Rice, and Marvin Mims. I'll pull up the draft board here so we can see who's available with my next pick. Kadarius Toney. Fuck, do I want to go completely disgusting and take a bunch of Kansas City Chiefs wild cards? I don't know. I personally prefer Sky Moore straight up to Kadarius Toney in Dynasty. So he'd actually, honestly, probably be my highest rated wide receiver. I'm definitely higher on Sky Moore than most people. I also like Jaden Reed as well. Not a whole lot going on at wide receiver, and I'm kind of regretting my pick there. I actually think the value is at running back on the board currently. I think Rachaad White should not be on the board at this point in time. I think Kendre Miller is probably a good value at this point in time. I like both Washington running backs. I like A.J. Dillon here. I like Dave Montgomery here. I also like James Cook a little bit as well. So yeah, I mean, pretty solid value still available at the running back position. I'm likely regretting that Isaiah Pacheco pick, because if I taken Rashad Bateman there, I could have just filled out running backs here in round 9, 10, 11 to go along with Travis Etienne. And honestly, like this is the type of team that I maybe have like a house money season with. Like it'd probably be difficult to compete knowing that Kyler Murray is, coming off a major injury. Bryce Young's a rookie. Jordan Addison's a rookie. Kyle Pitts seems to not be a great short-term projection, but is a good long-term projection. So that'd be interesting. I probably jumped the gun on Pacheco a little bit there. Tried to trade Breece Plus for Bijan, but the other owner wasn't having it. So, I mean, there's a good chance that the other manager is not high on running backs coming off of ACL tears. If I had to guess, that's probably why they weren't having the Breece for Bijan kind of move. So that's probably where that's coming from. This guy's going to fucking auto pick Rachaad White, isn't he? Oh, he auto picked Alvin Kamara. That's so much more satisfying. You love to see that. I'll grab Rachaad White here. I'm not super high on Rachaad White as a Buccaneers fan. I'm not sure that he's like the future of our running back position. What I think he can be is like, we used to have a guy by the name of Charles Sims a couple of years ago who was like a good receiving back for him. I think Rachaad White's more talented than Charles Sims, but I think the role that he's going to play, it should be that of what Charles Sims was doing. And we need an early down running back to be able to carry the workload. I don't know if that's going to be Sean Tucker or not. He was an undrafted free agent for a reason. If I was the Buccaneers, I probably would have spent a pick on Dwayne McBride on day 3 or, one of those type of guys. But I mean, Sean Tucker, I thought was, worthy of going in like the 3rd, 4th round. So if he works out, that definitely would make a decent 1-2 punch for those two guys. Ridley versus JMO versus Pickens. What is the value difference? I am going to go to my trade value chart to check that out. And if you guys want access to said trade value chart, of course, you can check it out over on our site. But the way I have those guys valued right now, so you said Ridley, JMO, and Pickens. I have Calvin Ridley valued as a late first rounder. So like the 109 to 112. If you're a contender, I'm okay giving up a late one for Calvin Ridley. The way I have Jameson Williams valued is that of a late first rounder as well. So even though Calvin Ridley is my wide receiver 25 in Dynasty and Jameson Williams is my wide receiver 36 in Dynasty, that is actually, ironically, the beginning and the end of the tier. And George Pickens is in the middle of that at wide receiver 33. So all three of those guys are valued to me as like a late first rounder in superflex formats or in one quarterback formats. But I do rate them Calvin Ridley, little bit of a tier break, George Pickens, Jameson Williams, even though they're all kind of in the same relative value bucket, like I said. And if you want to know which players I value for mid to late first rounders and, 2 first rounders and that kind of stuff, definitely check out the trade value charts that are live on the site. And I'm probably going to be updating those in the next couple of weeks as well. Would you take Jacobs, Andrews, Tony for Bijan? Or need more first? Okay, so one quarterback league, Jacobs, Andrews, and Tony. No, I would not take that for Bijan. So I mean, we're talking, when we just look at where these guys went in the startup. Am I on the clock right now? I am on the clock right now. Okay. God, I do not love the wide receiver board. I'm just going to take another running back at this point. I think that's where the value is. I'm going to go with Brian Robinson. I think he's got a good projectable workload as like a goal line back for like a half decent offense this year. So, okay. So you mentioned Jacobs 4.7, which I think was a little early. And then Andrews 3.9, which I think was probably about fair value for the 103. And then Kadarius Toney, who has even been picked yet. Okay. He went at the 9.11. So for me, if you wanted to do that trade because you need depth or something, I would still want an additional first on that for it to be a fair deal. And even then, man, like I would just rather have the value over replacement commodity that Bijan Robinson is, because not only is he going to be the best dynasty running back for the next 2, 3, 4 years until we get another great prospect coming out, he's also already a top 3 redraft pick on Underdog. So he's going to have great short-term value, great long-term value, and that's very rare. And he's pretty much the only running back we can project that for in his entire positional landscape, which just makes him way more valuable than every other guy. Unless Breece Hall was healthy, then he would be the other kind of exception to that rule. So, yeah, for me, that's not enough. I would shave Tony off of that trade, and I would rather have Andrews plus like a better asset. So, like if the guy had like Jalen Waddle and Mark Andrews or something, I would prefer to do that than Jacobs, Andrews, Tony, and even picks on top of it. Yeah, he said injury was why. Yeah, so yeah, if he's not in on Breece Hall from an injury perspective, there's pretty much nothing you can do until Breece Hall gets healthy, and then maybe you can make a move at that point. Javonte would have been great for your team. Danny ruined everything. Yeah, Javonte would have been awesome for my team, so I'm really annoyed about that. Was able to trade Russ for a 2025 first in Superflex. Good or bad? I mean, if you're not competing, I think that's a pretty solid return. I actually did the same thing. Late in the season this past year, I was able to sell him for a 2025 first as well. What is your rough equivalent value for a top 3 2024 first? So this is an interesting question because a top 3 2024 first is obviously one of Caleb Williams, Drake May, or Marvin Harrison in Superflex. This question would change a little bit if we were talking one quarterback, because I think Harrison is well above the rest of the assets, as good as Raheem Sanders and Trey Benson and Emeka Egbuka and Xavier Worthy and those guys are. I think Harrison is a cut above them. So at least with the quarterbacks, with May and with Williams, we're talking about an asset equivalent to, like, if I look at my wide receiver rankings, would I rather have an early guaranteed top 3 2024 first or Chris Olave, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Jalen Waddle, T. Higgins, Drake London? I would rather have an early first than everybody that I just mentioned, except for Amon-Ra St. Brown and Chris Olave. So from my wide receiver 1 to 7, I would slot Marvin Harrison right now as my wide receiver 8 as it currently stands. I would take him over T. Higgins. I would take him over Drake London. I would take him over DK Metcalf. I would take him over Jalen Waddle, but I would not take him over Amon-Ra St. Brown, Chris Olave, Garrett Wilson, AJ Brown, CeeDee Lamb, Jamar Chase, or Justin Jefferson as it currently stands. And then at quarterback, I mean, I personally would still take every quarterback not named I would still take Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, Jalen Hurts, Joe Burrow, Justin Herbert, Lamar Jackson, Trevor Lawrence, Justin Fields, Deshaun Watson, and Kyler Murray over a top 3 first. I love Kyler Murray. You guys know that. And I know Caleb Williams could eventually be his replacement in Arizona, but I would still today take Kyler Murray over a potential Caleb Williams or Drake May pick, because I think he's just that good of a quarterback. And he's been a top 5 fantasy guy pretty much every season. And of course, Sky Moore just had to go like right before my pick, which is infuriating. But I'll take Darnell Mooney. I talked about him in the wide receiver contracts video. Not a great situation in Chicago this year, with DJ Moore now coming in. Darnell Mooney has been, though, a good target earning wide receiver, and he's still young enough that if he has another good season this year, if Justin Fields takes a step forward, whatever the case is, he might have a breakout season or a second breakout because he's already has a 1,000-yard season under his belt and hit free agency and get paid a la Christian Kirk a couple years ago. So I like Darnell Mooney as a guy in the 11th, 12th, 13th round. Guy still young, talented, commands targets. Kind of reminds me a little bit of like Marquise Brown before he kind of broke out with Baltimore, or almost like a light version. I mean, like everybody's making the Philadelphia Eagles, Chicago Bears comparison where Jalen Hurts is Justin Fields, DJ Moore is AJ Brown. Somebody has to be Devontae Smith, and Darnell Mooney is actually like the same dimensions as Devontae Smith. I don't think they're going to be that good. I don't think they're going to be as good as the Eagles were, but if they're the 17th best offense in the league in a points per game perspective, I think Darnell Mooney can have flex appeal at the very least. Who's your favorite late round startup picks, like 16th round or so and beyond? So we've actually made videos on this. If you want to check them out on the channel, I can't actually show the board at the moment, but so my strategy when it comes to like late 16th round or whatever, and beyond, is I like taking shots on players that I know are talented. So if we get into the 17th round and there's a wide receiver on there that has like a top 15 season or a top 20 season under their belt, I mean, it's worth a shot at that point in time. I also like taking shots on ambiguous backfield situations. So if you want to take shots on Sean Tucker or Dwayne McBride or, whatever, ambiguous backfield situations, preferably for young running backs, there as well are good dart throws. And then also any quarterback that can accumulate value is not a bad investment either. I'm not sure you're going to get Brock Purdy or fucking, Sam Howell or anybody like that in the 16th round, but maybe you can get Desmond Ridder or Baker Mayfield or somebody like that. And if they can accumulate value in Superflex specifically, they're not terrible as well. How much would you need on top of Gibbs how much on top of Gibbs would you need to sell Bijan? I would want at least a 2024 first, I think, on top of Jahmyr Gibbs to go off of him for Bijan, because I think Bijan is a cleaner projection. If I were selling Bijan Robinson, I think I wouldn't even accept a 2024 first and Gibbs, assuming that first is not going to be early. I would probably want like a 1 or 2 in Gibbs, because I think he's that valuable, Bijan Robinson. So that's where I'm at there. Diggs for Jameson Williams and a first in a 1 quarterback. Would you rather trade Jameson Williams for Ridley straight up? 10 team, hopefully 107 to 110. So, I would rather have Ridley straight up. Let's put it that way. That's an easy trade if you can pull it off. But if you're competitive, I would take Diggs over Jameson Williams and a late first, for me at least. That's a difficult question. I think for me, I would probably just rather take Ridley and not have to give up Diggs if you're the one giving up Diggs or if you're the one giving up the first. I think the easy trade for me is I would just rather trade Jameson Williams away in exchange for Calvin Ridley, who I know is a talented player. Do you think a late 2024 first will be more valuable than a late 2023 first? Yeah, I think this is an interesting question. I do think it will be slightly more valuable, but I will say there's a lot of potential, and I broke this down in depth in the quarterback, running back, and wide receiver videos on the site. There's a lot of potential for all 3 of those classes to produce a lot of talented players. Like Caleb Williams and Drake May are obviously locked in guys at quarterback, but it's possible that none of the other quarterbacks emerge, like Michael Penix Jr., KJ Jefferson, anybody you want to name, Quinn Ewers, JJ McCarthy, Shadur Sanders, Jackson Dart, Bo Nix. Like there's so many guys, Jordan Travis, there's so many guys that could emerge at quarterback, but I also wouldn't be shocked if none of them emerged. So that would obviously make the late first area less valuable, because if there's only 2 quarterbacks, then that means that the skill positions are going to fly off fast and furious after that. Same with the running back position. I think Raheem Sanders, and Travion Henderson and Trey Benson are pretty solidified day 2 caliber running backs, in my opinion. But then there's also a mix match of Blake Corum, Donovan Edwards, Will Shipley, and Braylon Allen, who I wouldn't be shocked if they're day 2 running backs. I also wouldn't be shocked if they're day 3 running backs. And then again, that would hurt the running back class. And then the wide receiver position, Harrison's a stud, Emeka Egbuka's borderline stud. And then you have Xavier Worthy, who's coming off of a down season, but he should be fine. I think he should be able to rebound. He's got speed, so he'll probably go highly in the draft. And then we have Malik Neighbors, who dealt with some legal trouble, but he is very talented as well. The wide receiver position outside of those four guys has a lot of question marks after them. So there's a lot of guys that could emerge and be top 5 receivers and be guys that we're excited to draft. But there's also a lot of guys that could just, disappear and vanish. And it might just be Harrison and Igbuka in the first round. And then maybe we get like 3 or 4 more wide receivers in the top 50 of the draft that are semi-interesting. So as of right now, I would say a late 2024 first is more valuable than a late 2023 first, just because we know the caliber of prospects we're getting at the late first round of 2023. But it's possible that it's just as bad. If I'm being honest, it's also possible that's way better. So that's why we're going to, throughout the season, I will 100% keep you guys updated on how my rankings are changing. Probably tomorrow or the day after, I'm going to do a tier rankings list for 2024 prospects as well. So you guys get an idea of the depth of the class. And like I said, throughout the season, week 5, week 10, week 15, early in January, I'm going to update you guys on how I feel about the class, how it's materializing. Is the running back position strong, or did a lot of those guys fall off? Is the wide receiver position strong, or is it just those main top guys? Is the quarterback position strong, or is it just Caleb Williams and Drake May? I will definitely keep that updated. And of course, Brock Bowers factors into this as well, as does Jatavion Sanders from Texas. On the clock right now in the 8th, looking between Kincaid, White, and Hopkins. Team so far is Trevor Lawrence, Bryce Young, Jahmyr Gibbs, Jordan Addison, Jerry Jeudy, George Kittle, and Chris Godwin. So your team, it's difficult because you can't, Hopkins doesn't fit your team because you have a rookie quarterback and Trevor Lawrence, who's a young quarterback. You have a rookie running back and a rookie wide receiver. So for me, this is more of like a house money team, or a 1-year punt out of the startup, whatever you want to call it. So for me, I personally would go with, the tough thing is you already have Kittle. So Kincaid would actually make a ton of sense for your team. And I think he would still be my pick. I think that's exactly who I would go with, but I would also want to know who's on the board at wide receiver. Some of the guys that went the 8th round here, did any of these guys fall? Like, is Rashad Bateman or Elijah Moore on the board still? I would rather go with those guys over any of the options you listed, but also Dalton Kincaid would make some sense as well. Even though you have George Kittle, I think he could accumulate a ton in value. Fun mock went almost full rebuild. Definitely took Jacobs a little high. Didn't expect that many wide receivers to go off quick. So let's go over some teams here, and then we'll sign out of this draft. It looks like Cam is this team here. He was just talking about how he took Jacobs, AJ Brown, Gibbs, Quentin Johnston. See, again, as much as Jacobs fell and you took the value on him, he just doesn't fit your team at all. So now you're stuck with the reality that you have to sell him. And knowing that he fell means that your league mates, in this case us, are probably not high on Josh Jacobs. So now you're tasked with the difficult thing of, now I got to sell this guy. I personally, in your situation, if you went running back, would have went with Kenneth Walker, or just go with a wide receiver at that spot so that your team is aligned. Because when you go with AJ Brown, Jahmyr Gibbs, Quentin Johnston, you're already kind of gearing towards at least a house money or 1-year punt situation. So other than that, I think you did a good job, but that's something I definitely wouldn't have done. Let me look at Kat Stafford's team because he was in the chat as well. Devontae Smith, Jalen Hurts, Brandon Ayuk, DK Metcalf. This is looking like a decent team. You go pretty cheap at running back, pretty high priority at wide receiver. I like this build for you there, Kat. It's a half tight end premium. So Kincaid being on the board is probably going to be my pick, even though Bateman and Moore are on the clock as well. I wouldn't mind trading down to G16 if you're not really sold on Kincaid. I would maybe dangle him in the league chat, or something like that, because I don't think you have to make a pick here. And I would encourage you, if you can, to somehow parlay this into a 2024 first. I would sell this pick straight up right now for a 2024 first from a team if they were willing to give you that. They might not be willing to do that though. So even if you just traded down, a round or so in ADP, you might still be able to get Bateman and Moore there and not have to make a pick here. Elijah Moore or Wan'Dale Robinson in an early second. I think process probably dictates you go with Wan'Dale in the second, although I am just very high on Elijah Moore, and I don't mind taking the bet there. I just think that's a little steep of a price. I paid an early second in 2023 for Elijah Moore, but the early second in 2024 has a little bit more liquidity because we don't know how good the class is going to be yet. And also, Wan'Dale Robinson himself is probably worth about a mid to late second. So I think that's a little steep for Elijah Moore. So I think I would take the Wan'Dale side there. I had to bite my tongue as a recently picked up orphan team traded there pretty much locked top 3 first for Russell Wilson in a league I commissioned. You hate to see that. That's something you definitely do not want to do. So I'm going to go over my team real quick, and then we will probably sign out of here. Just keep this one under an hour so people go back and rewatch this thing. Amon-Ra St. Brown, Kyle Pitts, Jordan Addison. Again, going for a young build. Jahan Dotson fits that as well. Kyler Murray and Bryce Young fits that. Again, if I could go back, I would have wanted Danny to not take Javonte Williams, but if he did, I probably would have just gone with Rashad Bateman there at the 7-8, knowing that I could have gotten good value at running back. Maybe instead of Bryce Young, I grabbed Devon Achane. Maybe Bryce Young falls back to me in the next round, whatever the case is. Pretty content with that team. I rarely would ever take Isaiah Pacheco in a startup, but I wanted to see what it was like to do that. So the coming days, the next few days, we're going to be breaking down some good videos for you guys. 2023 rookie drafts are pretty much in the books, I would say, for most of you, but a lot of you guys have submitted teams to Dynasty Decisions where you haven't had your rookie draft yet. And I don't want to discriminate against you guys who haven't had yours yet. And also, I think it's just fun to rehash the rookie rankings discussion again. So me and Danny are going to do an updated top 24 tier list of our rookie rankings and talk about what changed now that we know how the market is valuing Dalton Kincaid, for example. Because the first time we did it, we had no idea how they were going to value him, and how the market is valuing Anthony Richardson, for example, because now we know how they're valuing him. And we'll talk about the changes and who's on the move and that kind of thing, where the value pockets are. And then I am going to break down, like I said, my top 24 tier list for 2024 rankings now that I'm done that series over on the site. And again, if you want access to the film breakdowns, they will not ever be on YouTube because I copyright wise, I'm not able to put them on. So if you want to see me break down film on Marvin Harrison, on Emeka Egbuka, on Xavier Worthy, on Malik Neighbors, on Raheem Sanders, on Trey Benson, on Caleb Williams, on Drake May, I did them all on Flock Fantasy. So definitely check out the site. Use the promo code FSE for 100% back when you sign up. Of course, you guys know the deal already. And of course, if you sign up annually, you get a consultation. So if you want to have a Dynasty team, personalized advice by me or by Danny, signing up annually on Flock Fantasy will get you all of our stuff for the year. That means Dynasty content, in-season content will cover you into next year's rookie drafts, obviously, a year from now. And you'll get a Zoom consultation with one of us as a free gift, and you'll save 30%, and you'll get 6 months for free by signing up annually. So that was a mouthful. Hopefully you guys got some value from this live stream. I will answer these last couple questions, then we're going to sign out of here. Actually got into a league last night with a 0.3 per carry. I think, honestly, this might start becoming a little bit more standard across the fantasy space because running backs are so undervalued now from a longevity standpoint that this might actually kick into gear a little bit. I actually don't mind this. I wouldn't mind joining a league with this kind of format. I'm actually in one league that has points per first downs, and the running back position is a little bit more valuable in that format. But that's definitely interesting. I think it wouldn't change it a vast amount. It definitely would make Bijan very valuable, but it's kind of like tight end premium. It makes the position valued a little bit more in general, but the top end guys are really the guys that really benefit from that. Jalen Hurts are 2024 first, 1 first, and CJ Stroud. That is a pretty strong offer. I'm not going to lie. It's so hard to ever say I want to trade away Jalen Hurts or any elite quarterback for that matter. This is a pretty good package. I'm not going to lie. 2 firsts in 2024, especially if either of those have a chance to not be at the end of the first round, and a 2025 first, and CJ Stroud, who I value as like a mid first next year and a second in terms of value. You're basically getting 4 firsts and a second of value for Jalen Hurts. So I think I would actually make this trade, but I understand if you're in a competitive window or whatever. But if you're a rebuilder, like, this is a great framework for you to help build out your team and offload Jalen Hurts' production and tank your own first rounder. What can I get back for Anthony Richardson in a trade? I would say I'd be looking for 2 1s for Anthony Richardson or, Bryce Young plus, knowing what the market value is. So that is the end. Again, leave a like if you guys enjoyed. Subscribe if this was your first time checking us out. Stay tuned for next week. If you ever have video suggestions, leave them down below in the comments. Hit me up in the Twitter DMs, whatever the case is. We are into July now, fellas. We have 3 weeks from now. We're going to be talking training camp. We're going to be talking buzz. This guy's going to be making plays. That guy's going to be running with the ones. It's going to be going fast and furious. And I'm very, very excited for it. So definitely stick around here. We will have you covered. But with that being said, peace out. I'll talk to you soon.